It was supposed to be Boeing's next big leap, a modern, efficient update to one of the world's most trusted planes. But in less than 5 months, two brand-new 737 MAX jets fell from the sky, killing 346 people. Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Two tragedies that grounded the global fleet, shattered Boeing's reputation, and left passengers around the world asking, how could this happen? Years later, after redesigns, recertifications, and countless promises of safety, the 737 MAX is back in the skies. But here's the question that matters most. Would you fly on it today? This is the story of the Boeing 737 MAX and the truth about whether it's finally safe to fly. Today, we're unpacking what went wrong, the tragic crashes that grounded an entire fleet, and how Boeing rebuilt the trust of regulators, pilots, and passengers. It's sleek, efficient, and the latest evolution of one of the most successful airliners ever built. But this plane, the Boeing 737 MAX, was also at the center of one of the darkest chapters in modern aviation. In the 2010s, the aircraft manufacturer Boeing Commercial Airplanes sought to update its workhorse 737 family to compete with newer models from rivals such as the Airbus A320neo. The result was the 737 MAX series. The program promised improved fuel efficiency, commonality with earlier 737s, so airlines wouldn't need extensive retraining, and a fast production ramp-up. But in doing so, some significant design choices and assumptions were made, choices that would later become critical. Design and development of the 737 MAX. Because the MAX used larger, more fuel-efficient engines than prior 737s, and because the engines were mounted somewhat further forwards and higher on the wing, the aerodynamics of the aircraft changed. One effect was a change in how the airplane's nose would respond in certain conditions, especially high angle of attack or steep banks. Boeing's engineering response was to introduce a software-based flight control augmentation system called the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS. The idea, when the plane's nose pitched up in certain low-speed or flaps-up configurations, MCAS would act to reduce the nose-up attitude, making the aircraft feel and fly more like previous 737 models. Importantly, in the certification and training materials, Boeing emphasized that the MAX would be essentially a derivative of the prior 737s, so airlines would not require full new simulator training for pilots already type-rated on the 737. However, during development, the design and certification assumed that MCAS would reliably work, that pilots would respond within a few seconds to malfunctions, and that certain sensors, such as the AOA sensors, would not fail in a way that would lead to repeated MCAS activations. These assumptions would later prove problematic. As the MAX program advanced, Boeing, in conjunction with the Federal Aviation Administration and other regulators, conducted development and certification tests. But several issues emerged. 1. MCAS had been certified based on a single AOA sensor input, not both sensors. 2. The hazard classification for an MCAS malfunction was set by Boeing as major rather than hazardous or catastrophic, which meant less rigorous failure mode analysis. 3. Test scenarios did not sufficiently include erroneous sensor data feeding into MCAS, nor repetitive unintended activations of MCAS. 4. Training and manuals did not clearly describe MCAS, and many pilots did not know the system existed or how it could behave in malfunction. In short, the aircraft passed certification, But some of the assumptions about pilot reaction times, sensor reliability, system logic, and pilot training were later seen as inadequate. The first crash, Lion Air Flight 610 on October 29, 2018. Flight 610, operated by Lion Air, a 737 MAX 8, crashed into the Java Sea 13 minutes after takeoff from Jakarta, killing all 189 people aboard. Investigators found a complex chain of events. 1. The AOA sensor on the aircraft had been miscalibrated during a prior repair. The MCAS system received erroneous angle of attack data and repeatedly pushed the nose down. The pilots were fighting the system for many minutes. 3. The pilot training and manuals did not sufficiently reflect MCAS or its failure modes, and the crew had to respond to multiple alerts and workload issues. 4. The certification process had assumed that, in the event of malfunction, the pilots would respond within about 3 seconds. But evidence showed it took much longer in the cockpit. The Indonesian investigation concluded that Boeing's design and certification of MCAS did not adequately consider the likelihood of loss of control of the aircraft. This crash triggered global concern, but was not by itself the end of the story. Rather, it was the beginning. Second crash, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 and the subsequent fleet grounding less than 5 months later in March 2019. A second 737 MAX aircraft, operated by Ethiopian Airlines, crashed under similar circumstances, killing 157 people. This second tragedy heightened alarm among regulators and airlines. In the wake of the 2 crashes, regulators around the world grounded the entire 737 MAX fleet. Investigations expanded to look at Boeing's design, certification, training, pilot manuals, and the FAA's oversight. Investigators found not just isolated mistakes, but systemic deficiencies. For example, a House report concluded that the crashes were the horrific culmination of a series of faulty technical assumptions by Boeing's engineers, a lack of transparency on the part of Boeing's management, and grossly insufficient oversight by the FAA. The certification delegation model, in which Boeing conducted much of the technical certification work under FAA oversight, came under heavy scrutiny. The result? Grounding, cancelled deliveries, major financial and reputational damage for Boeing, and a rethink of training, certification, and design processes, findings, and what went wrong. In reviewing the circumstances, investigators and regulators identified multiple key problems. Here's a summary. 1. MCAS design flaw. MCAS depended on a single OA sensor reading. When that reading was erroneous, the system could push the stabilizer nose down repeatedly. The magnitude of MCAS authority was greater than pilots were told. 2. Pilot training/awareness. Many pilots were unaware of the MCAS system, how it worked, and how to respond when it activated erroneously. Manuals and training did not sufficiently reflect the new system. 3. Assumptions about crew response. Boeing's certification assumed rapid pilot reaction in 3 seconds to malfunctions. Real-world evidence showed pilots took much longer under high stress and multiple alerts. 4. Sensor reliability and system redundancy. AOA sensor failure was a triggering factor. Lack of dual sensor logic made the system vulnerable. 5. Certification oversight issues. The delegation model allowed Boeing to self-certify certain elements. Regulators later found that FAA oversight was insufficient. 6. Maintenance Logging issues. In the Lion Air case, maintenance logs were incomplete. Previous flights of the aircraft had flight control issues that should have grounded the aircraft. In essence, it was not a single error, but a cascade of design, software, training, maintenance, and oversight shortfalls. Corrective actions and return of the fleet to service. Following the groundings, Boeing, the FAA, and international regulators like the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, embarked on a multi-year remediation program. Key corrective actions included MCAS software redesign. The updated software now compares both AOA sensors, instead of relying on one, triggers only one MCAS activation per event, limits the stabilizer input so the pilot always retains control column authority. AOA disagree alert, a cockpit display alert, now triggers if the two angle of attack sensors disagree by a certain threshold, which was previously optional. Wiring modifications. Separation of wiring bundles controlling the horizontal stabilizer trim was mandated to meet modern standards and reduce the risk of wiring short circuits or unintended trim commands. Updated pilot training. Mandatory full-motion simulator training on the MAX. Updated manuals that explicitly describe the MCAS system and failure modes, and revised crew procedures. Maintenance updates. Maintenance manuals now include MCAS system descriptions, built-in test equipment checks, and new tasks for inspecting AOA sensor systems and stabilizer trim systems. Regulatory conditions for return. EASA set out 4 conditions. 1. Accident root causes understood. 2. Design changes implemented. 3. Independent design review completed. And 4. Pilot training updated. After a roughly 20-month grounding, regulators cleared the 737 MAX to return to service in phased fashion. Once these changes were certified and airlines satisfied the training and retrofit requirements. Boeing's own summary states, "We redesigned how the flight control computers process AOA sensor information. They now compare both sensors. Pilots retain the ability to override." In short, Boeing and regulators addressed the major design and training issues, enforced manufacture and maintenance changes, and improved pilot awareness and training. As of now, the 737 MAX is flying again for many airlines around the world. But the episode has left deep footprints in aviation history. Lessons learned include, and software-based flight control systems cannot be treated as minor modifications. They need full hazard analysis, redundancy, and rigorous pilot training. Sensor redundancy and system cross-checking are critical. Relying on one sensor without cross-validation is risky. Pilot training must reflect differences in new aircraft models, and airlines and manufacturers must not assume similarity will suffice. Certification oversight matters. Regulators and manufacturers must maintain strong independent review and not delegate excessively. Maintenance and logging discipline are key. Prior warnings or anomalies on an aircraft should trigger grounding or deep inspection. Current status: the MAX is flying and has been certified by major regulators, including EASA and FAA, with modifications in place. The return was granted only after regulators performed independent reviews, test flights, simulator checks, and were satisfied. However, Boeing continues to face scrutiny regarding quality control, production oversight, and manufacturing culture. The MAX story remains a cautionary tale. Final thoughts. The 737 MAX saga shows how interconnected design, software, human factors, training, certification, and oversight are in aviation. Even a single misstep in one domain, such as sensor logic, can cascade into disaster. But it also shows that the industry can respond, redesign, retrain, recertify, and restore safety. The goal now is to maintain that vigilance so that air travelers can continue to rely on the safety of the system. The Boeing 737 MAX crisis changed aviation forever. And while the plane is safer now, it's a powerful reminder that in aerospace, every design choice matters. What do you think? Would you feel safe flying on a 737 MAX at this time? Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment with what you think about flying the MAX today. Until next time, fly safe and stay curious.